James Cameron, and doing various other projects with that kind of scope. So.
I'm Lillian Diaz-Prismal. I'm the senior editor at Tokyopop. I do both licensed manga and original manga development.
Luis Reyes. I was a senior editor at Tokyopop. Now I'm an associate producer for Nexon America, producing the video games over there.
I'm Robert Napton, and I wear two hats at Bondi. I'm director of marketing as well as editor of the manga line.
I'm going to start with a few questions that were submitted online, and then we'll open it up to the audience for questions. First question we have online is, what would you say if there is a lacking foundation between mangas created in the United States and those created in Japan today?
Sorry,
Would you say, or would you think, or if there is one, is there a lacking foundation between mangas created in the United States and those created in Japan?
The lack is 50 years of an industry in Japan. Manga's been around in Japan since after World War II. It's been a technique that's been refined for decades now. It's a huge growing industry. There's an apprenticeship system where young creators get to work, even just drawing backgrounds or inking or doing digital tones, applying screen tones with professional artists, and that sort of trains them in the ways of making manga. The U.S. market is very new. It's been around for 10 years, well, 15 years really in terms of licensed manga, and about 10 years in terms of doing original material. There just hasn't really been the same amount of time for people to learn that craft and refine it.
Yeah, there's also an attitude commercially in the United States that you do something and there's instant financial gratification. I think a lot of publishers that are currently publishing manga, they create it, and then they put it out and they go, where's our money? We put manga on it. Manga's really, really hit. New York Magazine said so. Just for example, we had a manga creator named Felipe Smith who did a book called MBQ. The book didn't do so well in this country. Tokyopop didn't really push it because its initial sales weren't huge. But Felipe Smith was recruited by a Japanese company and is now the first non-Japanese manga creator in Japan that's really producing something on a weekly level. So, it just goes to show you that this very refined system that was developed over 50 years can definitely recognize talent where it is and and of course, Felipe is doing that long apprenticeship. He's not getting paid much. He's drawing something ridiculous, like 7 or 8 pages a week or something. He's doing a lot of work, and it's that long work for a long period of time that hasn't really set in place in the United States.
I think another thing to kind of keep in mind is that even in Japan, when you do have this apprenticeship system, people's first series are not necessarily their most successful. And the best example of that is Fruits Basket, which is obviously a huge hit in Japan, tremendous hit here. She had 2 5-volume series that she did before that, at least, including short stories and other things. And those are really good stories, but they were never the successes that Fruits Basket was. You can see her talent there, especially kind of in retrospect. But you kind of have to go through, 10 volumes is like at least 5 years worth of kind of professional level work to get up to the level where you have this kind of mega hit that I think people really associate with the manga market.
It's good that the Japanese don't age.
Yes.
The longest period of time they can really...
And they seem to be able to work constantly without any sort of stop, which
That's
I incredibly admire.
I'm actually doing editorial work for another, so we're totally
whatever.
conversation.
That's why you're here.
I'm doing editing work for another company called Radical Comics right now, just on the side, just because I really like being in the comics world. And we were writing up the schedule for the comic artist, and we were doing it about like 2, maybe 3 pages a week. And when I was pushing for like 4 pages a week because we wouldn't be able to make the schedule they wanted, they were like, I think you've been working at manga too much. That's just not how American artists work. And I'm just like, well, dude, American artists better work like that because manga artists can, spit out sometimes 15 pages a week. Just, getting out there and their storytelling is really, really sharp. So, just a difference in cultures.
Yeah, and I think also what I noticed, going way back to, like when Adam Warren in the 80s did the first of his Dirty Pair comics, which was to me kind of the first American manga, quote unquote, is you had a kind of a fusion style. There was definitely a manga influence, but it was still very much an American perspective on drawing sequential art. And so I think what's happened in the last, say, 5 years or 6 years is you have artists who are coming up in the US who are specifically trying to emulate the manga style. They aren't really influenced by American comics. So really, it's been a very short period of time. So I think there's a lot of in a sense, imitation still happening where artists are trying to figure out, how to do it. So I think, they need to be allowed to have that time to grow.
Yeah. Also, just our friend Jake Forbes, who used to be editor of Tokyo Pop, and then he went to go write video games and returned to Labyrinth. I mean, he's a really amazing guy. He actually was the one that convinced Tokyo Pop to bring Fruits Basket. They took one look at this and went, "We don't want to publish this." Jake's like, "Trust me, just bring it." But he was saying that I think the most important question to really ask, and we'll probably start off this whole panel, is why is it important for you to call it manga? Why is it really important to have that distinction as opposed to comics or bandes dessinées or some other? In Japan, they don't make the distinction. Pretty much, if it's all graphic material, it's all manga, graphic novelization. Or comics, right?
They use comics a lot there too.
Yeah, it's like they don't make the distinction. We make the distinction here in the United States for some reason. And I believe the reason a lot of people do it is because it's a marketing buzzword, not that it really represents a huge departure in style or tone or attitude. That everybody influences each other, and if you're working in this medium, you're all doing the same thing.
However, I do think that there are a few things that are sort of prototypical and really are the foundation of the Japanese style as it's developed, and that is worth noting. And it's not the stuff you necessarily think of. And when we're talking about sort of early imitators, it very quickly went to like, hey guys, colored hair, pointed chins.
Exactly.
It's like, okay, I mean, yeah, that's typical of a lot of manga, but in my mind, what really defines manga as a medium is it's impressionistic, it draws the reader in, you are immediately associating emotionally with the characters, there's a very visceral response to what you're seeing, which can be done through a variety of different visual techniques, and whether it's cutting away to an image that's completely unrelated while you're having a conversation, whether it's exploring different panel angles so you can really get this cinematic quality to it and really move the reader's eye through the page. That's a big thing that I think a lot of aspiring manga creators don't quite get in the US, is that the actual design of the page, how you're laying out the panels, where you're putting balloons, that is driving your reader to follow the flow of the story in a certain way, and it's controlled extremely carefully, and the best manga artists do this incredibly well. And that's something that all aspiring artists should really be kind of looking at, is what is it, not just visually about these cool character designs that makes this fun to read, but what is it that's making me flip page after page and run through this 200-page graphic novel in an hour.
Yeah. Talking about visual
it's
style.
very different from the American style, where you're really going panel, text.
Yeah, for example, I mean, like, you could take the same moment in both the comic or American comic and manga.
Yeah.
I mean, you could take a person crying, right? Where an American comic might actually have the guy, all the creases in their face, tears kind of coming down, it's like they'll draw every kind of detail, whereas the exact same scene might simply be a teardrop in one panel, which part of the teardrop is separated, so you can see this really small droplet and kind of a larger droplet, and nothing else. And it can be very, very effective. And we don't see a lot of that at least in American publishers as opposed to Japanese publishers.
People are getting there. It's interesting. I mean, I've been doing portfolio reviews and talking to young artists for 5 years now. And what I find is really interesting is that there are some people who get both the character design level and the storytelling flow, although the storytelling flow can only be refined. You see a lot of really young artists, though, who know exactly what a manga story is supposed to look like. They know how to pace it. They know how to kind of make it flow.